I'm 81 years old. My wife has been gone for 3 years now, and the house is quiet in a way I never understood before. Not peaceful, just quiet. I used to think silence was rest, something you earned after a long day. Now I know silence can also be a consequence. I'm not telling this story to feel better about myself at times past. I'm telling it because when you get to my age, you realize there are truths that don't soften with time. They harden, they sit with you, and if you don't say them out loud, they stay lodged somewhere deep and heavy. Her name was Margaret. Everyone called her Maggie except me. I always liked the full name. It felt solid, grounded, like her. We were married for 52 years. That's a long time to share a life with someone. Long enough to believe you know them completely. Long enough to assume there will always be another chance to hear what they're trying to say. I didn't know I was failing her. That's the part that still surprises me. If you had asked me back then, I would have told you I was a good husband. Reliable, present, faithful. I went to work every day. I paid the bills. I came home at night. I didn't disappear. I didn't cheat. I didn't drink too much. I thought those were the important things. Listening didn't feel urgent. It felt optional, like something you could always do later. Right now, I sit at the kitchen table where she used to drink her tea every morning. The chair across from me is still there. I haven't moved it. I don't know why. Habit maybe? Or hope? Or guilt? I'm not sure anymore. The mornings are the hardest. That's when she used to talk the most. She would tell me small things about a dream she had, about something she read, about a neighbor I barely knew, about worries she didn't quite finish explaining. And I would nod. I would say, uh-huh. I would glance at the paper or think about what needed to be done that day. I thought I was listening, but listening isn't just hearing words while you wait for your turn to think. I know that now. At this age, time feels different. It doesn't stretch forward anymore. It presses down. Every memory feels closer together, like pages stuck from years of being closed too long. I don't miss the big moments the most. I miss the small, ordinary ones I treated like background noise. Back when we were young, in our 20s, we didn't have much. I worked long hours, construction at first, then a supervisory role. My hands were always sore, my back always tight. When I came home, I wanted quiet. I wanted rest. I wanted to feel like the day was over. Margaret wanted connection. She wanted to talk about her day, about how lonely the afternoons felt once the kids were at school, about the thoughts she had but never written down, about questions that didn't have answers. I didn't see those conversations as important. They felt abstract, emotional, unfinished. I was raised to fix problems. If something didn't have a clear solution, I didn't know what to do with it, so I'd change the subject, or offer advice when she wasn't asking for any, or tell her she worried too much. I thought I was helping. Looking back, I can see the moment when something shifted in her. It wasn't dramatic, no yelling, no tears, just a gradual quieting. She spoke less. She asked fewer questions. She learned to carry things on her own. At the time, I took that as a sign of peace. I thought, finally, things are settled. They weren't settled. They were buried. Years passed like that. Kids grew, responsibilities stacked, days blurred, and the more stable life became, the less attention I paid to what was happening underneath it. We sat next to each other every evening. Same couch, same television, same routines. I mistook proximity for intimacy. Sometimes she would start a sentence and stop halfway through. I'd ask what, and she'd shake her head and say, never mind. I didn't push. I assumed if it mattered, she'd say it again. I didn't understand how many times a person can feel unheard before they stop trying. Even now, I replay those moments. Not because I enjoy the pain, because they don't leave me alone. They show up when the house is quiet, when the light changes in the afternoon, when I hear her favorite song by accident. I don't think I was cruel. That's almost worse. I was decent, predictable, responsible, and inattentive in 1,000 small ways that added up to something permanent. If I could speak to my younger self, I wouldn't tell him to work less, or earn more, or plan better. I would tell him to stop assuming there will always be another conversation, because one day, without warning, the conversations end, and you're left with the echo of your own voice, wondering why it sounds so empty. This is only the beginning of what I need to say. When I think back to our early years, I don't see mistakes. I see two young people doing what they thought was right. We married when I was 29. Margaret was 26. We didn't have grand ideas about love. We wanted stability, a home, children, a life that felt steady and respectable. That mattered a lot back then. I worked because that's what men around me did. You worked hard, you kept your head down, and you didn't complain. Providing was how you showed love. That was the language I was taught, and I spoke it fluently. Margaret spoke a different one. She noticed things, moods, silences, shifts in tone. She paid attention to people in a way I didn't understand. When she talked, she wasn't always trying to arrive somewhere. She was trying to share where she already was. I didn't know how to meet her there. Most evenings I came home tired, not just physically, mentally worn down. I'd sit at the table while she cooked and talk about work, about deadlines, about problems I'd solved. She would listen carefully, ask questions, remember names. When it was her turn, I didn't give her the same attention. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know that care required effort in that direction too. She would say things like, "I felt invisible today," or "Sometimes I feel like I disappear in this house." I heard the words, but I treated them like weather, something passing through, not something that needed shelter. I assumed feelings resolved themselves if you ignored them long enough. There were moments I remember clearly now, small ones. Her standing in the doorway while I watched the news, saying she had a strange dream. Me saying, "Can it wait?" Her nodding and walking away. Her telling me she was afraid of getting older. Me laughing and saying she'd always worry too much. Her asking me late one night if I was happy. Me answering quickly, without thinking. Of course, I never asked her the same question back. We raised our children well, at least from the outside. Birthday parties, school events, family dinners. I was there for the big things, the visible things, the things you can point to and say, "See, I showed up." Margaret was there for the quiet ones, the late-night worries, the emotional messes, the moments that didn't announce themselves. Over time, I noticed she stopped trying to talk in the evenings. She'd read instead, or knit, or go to bed early. I told myself she just needed space. I told myself not everyone needs constant conversation. I never considered that she might have given up on being heard. In our 40s, my career improved. More responsibility, more stress, more pride, if I'm being honest. People listened to me at work. They respected my opinions. They deferred to my decisions. I didn't realize how much that fed me. At home, Margaret didn't need my decisions. She needed my attention. And attention is harder to give than advice. Sometimes she would try again. She'd say, "Can I tell you something without you fixing it?" I'd agree, but within minutes I'd interrupt with a solution, a suggestion, a way to make it go away. I thought I was being useful. There was a night maybe 20 years ago that stays with me. We were sitting at the table after dinner. She told me she felt lonely even with me in the room. I remember feeling defensive, hurt, like I was being accused of something I didn't understand. I told her she was wrong, that I was right there, that I worked hard for us, that loneliness didn't make sense. She looked at me for a long time before saying quietly, "That's exactly what I mean." I didn't ask her to explain. That's what haunts me now. Not the arguments we had, but the ones we didn't finish, the conversations I shut down because they made me uncomfortable. Years went by. The kids moved out. The house got quieter. I thought this would be our time, that we'd reconnect naturally, that the talking would return on its own. It didn't. She became more inward, kinder in some ways, less demanding. She stopped asking me to notice things. She handled her disappointments privately. I took her calm as contentment. I was wrong.
When I think about listening now, I understand something I didn't before. Listening isn't passive, it's work. It asks you to put your own thoughts aside, to tolerate discomfort, to sit with things that don't have immediate answers. I wasn't willing to do that then. I loved her, yes, deeply in my own way. But love without listening leaves marks you don't see until it's too late. If you're wondering whether I regret my career, the long hours, the sacrifices, no, not exactly. Those things mattered. They built a life. What I regret is assuming I could delay emotional attention without consequence, because delay feels harmless when you believe time is endless. It isn't. The cost doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives quietly, years later, when the person you thought would always be there no longer needs to ask you to listen. This is still before the worst part.
The change didn't announce itself. There was no single moment where everything broke. That's something people don't talk about much. They expect regret to arrive with fireworks, with shouting, with slammed doors. But most of the damage in a long marriage happens in near silence. Margaret grew ill slowly. At first it was small things. Fatigue, forgetfulness. She brushed them off. So did I. We were in our 70s by then. Everyone expects the body to start misbehaving. She mentioned pain in her chest once, lightly, as if it were an inconvenience. I told her we'd get it checked later, after the holidays, after things settled. There was always something to finish first. By the time the doctor said the word terminal, I felt as though the floor had shifted under me without warning. Even then, I didn't fully understand what was ending. Hospitals have a way of stripping life down to essentials: white walls, slow machines, the steady beeping that marks time differently than clocks do. Margaret lay in that bed, smaller than I had ever seen her, and she talked more than she had in years. And this time, I listened. She spoke about her childhood, about things she had never told anyone, about fears she carried quietly for decades, about moments when she felt unseen in our marriage, even though she never doubted my loyalty. I sat there, holding her hand, realizing how many versions of her I had never known. That knowledge didn't comfort me. It crushed me. She wasn't angry. That was the hardest part. She wasn't blaming me. She spoke gently, carefully, as if she was still protecting me from something. She said, "I tried to tell you who I was, but I don't think you ever had time. I wanted to argue, to explain, to say I was tired or distracted or raised differently, but none of that mattered anymore. Explanations don't heal endings." In those last weeks, I became the listener I should have been all along. I asked questions. I waited. I let silences stretch. I absorbed every word like it might disappear if I didn't, because it would. There was one afternoon when she looked at me and said, "You know, I don't think you ever really heard me until now." She smiled when she said it, not unkindly, just honestly. I nodded. That was all I could do. After she died, the house filled with people for a while. Family, friends, neighbors. They brought food, stories, sympathy. Then, slowly, they left. Life resumed elsewhere. Mine didn't. I started noticing her absence in practical ways first. The missing routines, the empty chair, the lack of her voice asking simple questions. Then it deepened. I realized how much of her inner life had died with her. All the thoughts she never finished aloud. All the feelings she swallowed because I wasn't available to hold them. Those things were gone forever. I began talking to her in the evenings, out loud, telling her things I never said when she was alive, about how proud of her I was, about how much she mattered, about how sorry I was. The room never answered. Regret at this stage of life is different than when you're young. It isn't sharp, it's heavy, it settles into your bones, it moves with you. I don't wake up every day in pain. Some days are quiet, ordinary, but the understanding is always there, underneath everything else. I didn't fail because I didn't love her. I failed because I assumed love didn't require listening. What can't be fixed now is simple. She can't feel heard anymore. I can't go back and sit at that table differently. I can't open conversations that ended decades ago. Time doesn't negotiate. If you're listening to this and thinking about someone in your life,
I won't tell you what to do. I don't believe in instructions anymore. I believe in witness. All I can offer is this truth. Being present is not the same as being attentive, and attention, once withheld long enough, teaches people to stop asking for it. I don't know how much time I have left. Not years, certainly. I feel it in my body, in my memory, in the way days blur together now. But I know this story needs to be finished honestly.
I'm still here. That surprises me some days. I wake up, make my coffee, sit by the window, and wait for the day to tell me what it needs. There isn't much left to prove now. No one is watching the way they once were. That changes how you speak, how honest you allow yourself to be. When Margaret died, I thought the grief would be the hardest part. I was wrong. Grief has shape. It has rituals. People recognize it. They give you permission to be broken for a while. What followed was quieter, lonelier. It was the realization that much of what mattered between us was never fully exchanged. Not arguments, not apologies, simple understanding. I walk through the house and see traces of her everywhere. Notes in drawers, old photographs, the indentation on the couch where she always sat. Each one feels like a sentence cut off in the middle. I used to believe that if something mattered, it would demand attention, that important things couldn't be missed. That belief cost me more than I knew. Margaret didn't stop loving me. She adapted to being unheard. That's a dangerous thing. When people adapt to absence, they stop expecting presence. If there's anything I want you to understand, it's this. People don't leave suddenly, even when they stay. They withdraw in inches, quietly, politely, until one day the distance feels normal. I mistook her patience for peace. Now, when I talk to younger people, they ask what I would do differently. I don't give them speeches. I don't warn them dramatically. I just tell them I wish I had asked one more question each day and waited for the answer. Not while thinking about something else, not while preparing a response, just waited. Listening is not about agreement. It's about recognition, letting someone know their inner world has a place to land. I didn't offer that often enough. There are things I still don't know about Margaret, and there always will be. That's something I've had to accept. Marriage doesn't guarantee understanding. It only offers the opportunity for it. I missed too many of those opportunities. If you're hearing this and it stirs something uncomfortable, sit with that. Don't rush to label it or fix it. Discomfort can be a messenger if you let it speak. I don't have much time left. I feel that. I don't say it with fear, just awareness. When your days are numbered, you stop wasting words. This is mine. If this meant something to you, you can carry it quietly. You don't need to do anything with it right away. Just remember.